Hey guys, this is Ginger Bandine. I am going to start off our first ever Data Fun Friday. I'm really happy that you could be here to watch this. Couple things. Eventually, we will have a way that you can participate in Data Fun Friday live. So we're starting off with a couple recordings so you can get a sense of what we'll be doing in these adventures with data. But eventually, if you'd like, you could sign up and be part of the conversation live and ask questions and explore data yourself. So that's where we're going with this. But for today, it's Friday. And as I said, I would, because I told you that I would have a video today for Data Fun Friday, we're going to do Data Fun. The particular data set that I've been working on this week is the Credible Behavioral Health Electronic Health Record data set. So if you use Credible for your electronic health record, then our queries that we're working on today will work one-to-one for you. But if you don't, put in any questions you have in the comments. I'll try to mention where there's tables that you would want to replace or where there might be different logic, but some of the principles are going to apply no matter what. And the whole idea is to get you excited about using your data in new ways. So thanks for being here, and we'll get started. Okay, so this is SQL Management Studio, which is one way to interact with data that I really like. I know there are actually better tools out there. Some of them are expensive. This one's free if you have your database downloaded, which I do for a test system for Credible, because side note, I'm working on a project where everyone can get their Credible data downloaded and make it a lot easier to mess around with their data, because the Credible query system isn't great. So that's a side note. But so I have this system where I've downloaded all the tables that are in the Credible database into a database, and then this is in the SQL reporting language. You can use SQL to interact with this database, which is a pretty common language used among electronic health records. So a lot of the tables in Credible are actually labeled pretty easy to understand, and if you've done anything with data in your own system, you probably are familiar with the naming conventions. But one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately are social determinants of health. And I think there are some things in our electronic health record that we could use to look at social determinants of health without making extra work for our clinicians. And I'm always interested in how we can use data in ways, get information, get value, get meaning, but not add to our clinicians' already busy caseload, already busy workload. So one of the things I think about a lot is social determinants of health, because I used to be a community mental health agency worker. I used to work out in the community doing intensive case management for individuals affected by serious mental illness. And I think there are pieces of information in our electronic health record systems that we're just not, we're not optimizing our use of it. So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is social connectedness, which is one of the social determinants of health. So people who have more social connections, more meaningful relationships, tend to have a better health outcomes. And, you know, something that we capture in our electronic health records is whether people have other people involved in their treatment, whether they have, for example, an emergency contact listed. So I was thinking about that one way you could tell, you know, if someone was experiencing a lack of social connectedness would be if they didn't have an emergency contact listed in their record. And one of the things that's tricky about data that often people get stuck on is, how do you look for missing information? So how do you look for clients who are missing an emergency contact? And it's a great question. So I think that this little exercise we're going to do will work for other things you're doing where you're looking for information that's missing. So everyone is probably familiar with, so I'm going to put together here a really simple query, which, you know, so usually when you're doing a SQL query, you're going to say select, which is what you're interested in knowing, from, which is where that data is stored, and where, which is any special criteria that you want to put on that data. So if I wanted to see, and I'm not going to use any protected health information in these videos, so anything you see that might be protected health information will be grayed out. So let's say, though, I wanted to see all client genders from the client table where the gender is male. So we would say, so one trick to start off is if you put select star And then you go in and you put a table name in here, and you give it what's called an alias, which is just a little abbreviated name for it. Then you can type that alias and put a period, and it'll give you everything in that table in this little handy method here. So that's the client file. That didn't have what I was looking for. So let's see what else I've got if I do clients. I've got all of these things to start off with clients. Oh, there we go. That's the trick. It's clients. Now, I could use the same alias, and I won't have to start over again. So CF dot. So what's in the clients table? And let's look for gender. Now, if I wanted to find it faster, I could type part of it. Ooh, gender identity. Love it. So we'll say select gender identity. Now, what if I'm not sure if what gender identity is called in the client, like what the options are for that? So one trick that I use a lot is if I'm not sure what something's called, is I will just say select distinct gender identity from that table. Oh, well, that's interesting. No one's filled in gender identity. That's what that means right there in those results. So that's not really going to be very helpful. Let's see what else we've got in here. I'm going to make a guess here. See, in some electronic health records, gender is actually listed as sex. We could get into why that's maybe not ideal. But let's see if we've got there we go. Okay, so what this is telling me is that in this record set, we've got people with M for sex, F for sex, and X for sex, and also blanks, meaning no one put anything there. So that is interesting. So if I was really looking for people who had male listed, I would then go and use my where clause, where cf.sex equals M. Let's see if that works. What you sometimes need to do is put that in quotes. Let's try that. So there we go. So that's going to work. So now, what if we just wanted to know how many people in our database, in this data set, have that listed? We could just do a really simple little sum here, which is count of male. There we go. Now, count isn't perfect because it will multiply. It will count people more than once if they're listed more than once. Now, you won't run into that as much in the client table, but say you wanted to know how many clients receive services who are male. Then you would want to include the word distinct. And you would actually not want to count sex. You would want to count their unique identifier. So let's count client ID. Okay, now it's going to be the same because I'm still looking at the client records. But let's just say I wanted to only look at clients who receive services. Then you're going to use this other little trick called an inner join. So we're going to do clients inner join. In this database, it's called client visit. So we're going to say that's a CV. And we're going to say when you join two tables, you have to say what they join on. So I know that these two tables match on client ID. So I'm going to say inner join client visit on cv.clientid equals cf.clientid. And then I know now if I say count distinct clients again, there's fewer because not every one of those clients has received a service. And because I used what's called an inner join, that means it's only finding clients who received a service. Okay? Now we can see what the difference would be if I didn't have this distinct in there. Let's try it. So remember, 3160, huge, bigger number. So that is because it's now counting every one of the services. It's not counting just how many individual unique clients there were. So that's when distinct is really helpful, if you really just want to know how many clients there were. Okay, so that's counting clients, and we did an inner join to find clients who had a client visit. And then we did a where to say only clients who had a client visit and also have a sex listed of M. So where am I going with this? So this is the same trick. This is the beginning of the same trick you could use if you were looking for clients who were missing an emergency contact. Because first, we want to find clients who have an emergency contact. Because that's one way you can find things that are missing, is you start off with, okay, find me everyone who does have this. Now find me everyone else and take out the people who have that. Does that make sense? So in this case, say I wanted to see how many, if I wanted to do the same example, Now let's say I want to actually see everyone who's male who didn't have a service. Ooh, that'd be tricky, right? Sounds tricky. Well, I already know everyone who did have a service. So there's a couple ways to do this. There's multiple ways actually in SQL to do this. But one way that I sometimes do it is I'm like, okay, I start to pretend like this is its own little unit now, okay? I'm going to say this is its own little query that is everyone, all the males who had a service, okay? And I'm just going to call it out like males with service. Okay, but now what I really want is to select all the accounts. Same thing, right? Because I'm still going to count the distinct client IDs. But so actually, let's start with this select star, like I said. So now I want to select everything from, and I'm going to go back to my clients table. But this I'm going to give it a different alias because it's good to not use the same one twice. So I'm going to call it CE for everyone. And I'm going to say what I really want to do is count distinct CE.client ID, count of males without service. And you can use better names. I like to use wordy names, especially when I start off doing little explorations like this. Okay, and what I want is everyone from the client table, but I want where the client ID, and this is a little trick, is not in this little table, right? So where the CE.client ID is not in this little table. Now, what I need to do is make this little table list out the client IDs. So I'm going to take that out, and it's not in this thing. It's not in. We don't need to name it when we're using in. Where CE.client ID is not in. Not in. Select client ID from there. Where that? And I still want the I still want the sex to be equal to male. Oops. All right, so what's going on here? Well, we've got these little warnings here. And I know what it is. You don't have to say is. How about that? Now, this is what I really want to do in Data Fun Fridays, is I want us to work on things together, and I want you to see that I don't always get it right the first time. I have to do kind of what I call guess and check coding all the time too. So that's part of what I actually want to share with you is you don't have to know everything. You don't have to get it perfectly right the first time. You can kind of see the results you get and then adjust your approach. So I think that's one of the things that's really hard, especially if you're someone who's kind of a perfectionist. And that was really hard for me to get over. I still have to fight it sometimes. But that's part of what I want Data Fun Friday to be, is we just are having some fun with data. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of go back over my code real quick. So I'm counting how many clients are in the client table where the same client is not in the little table I made of clients who've had a service, and where the gender is, or sorry, the sex listed in this particular data set is still male. Okay, so if we can still run this little query, right? If you just highlight a query and click on your keyboard Control-E, that executes it. Oops, I'm going to have to figure that out because those are the actual client IDs, okay? So let's remove those results real quick. Okay, now, but that is what you would get, is you would see which are the clients in this table. And then I'm saying only count the clients that are not in that table but are in the client table. So let's try this whole thing. I'm just going to do Control-E. Ah, okay. So there's 1,018 males who never received a service in this database. Now, what could you use this for? Well, for that original question that I was talking about, right? So you could do the same little query for individuals who do have an emergency contact listed, and then find everybody in your database who doesn't have an emergency contact listed. And you could get some really interesting information about social connectedness. And then you could dice it, use some slicers, and you could, or some groupings to say, okay, how about by program? How about by provider? How about by people who have received a certain service? So that's what we're going to do at our next Data Fun Friday. So here's this query, and you can see it follows a very similar pattern, and I did just the same steps. So I did the same little trick to find what, I used the little select distinct. Here, we'll do that again really quick. So select distinct. We're going to use all of these same things, but we just want to know the contact type IDs. So CT contact type ID, and then we did all of the same stuff. And I was just trying to figure out, oh, just a little trick. If you do 2 little lines in front of a line of code, it ignores that. Oh, and you should spell contact type right. And then I did contact type, so I just did this little query to see how they were using contact types in the system. And then I found the emergency contact one, which I figured out was number 5. So you can see here I've got the 5 built in there, just like I did with the M. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the results, which I'm doing Control R to get rid of the results. Okay, so basically I said, oh, here's all the people with a contact type ID of 5, meaning they have an emergency contact. And here's all the people of everyone in the system who doesn't have an emergency contact. Basically everyone who's not in that system. And if I run that, I get 8,000 people. Now you could do some interesting things, right? Like you could say, okay, but I do want them to have had a service, because if the person hasn't had a service, well, we could use that trick we used above, right? Use the inner join to client visit. Same exact code as above, except it's going to be CE client ID. And then we only are showing people with a visit. Should go down a little bit. Oh, 6,000. So it's just one little way to look for data that's missing. And I think that looking for people who are missing an emergency contact, you know, depending on your workflow, maybe you would look for something else. Maybe you would look for any type of contact. You know, you can switch this really easily. You could say, what about people who don't have anybody listed on their record at all as another person in their life? I mean, potentially that means there's a high level of social connection that they're missing. It might not mean that. You might not be working at an agency where they capture that, but it could mean that. So let's just see, for example, here. Oh, wow. So 3,600 people who have had a service don't have any other person listed on their record. That's really important to realize. It would be interesting to look at the folks in that category, and we could do that at another visit. So, yeah. All right, guys, that's Data Fun Friday for today. If you have suggestions for things you'd like to see in a future Data Fun Friday, reach out to me, send me an email. You can find my website at missiondrivendata.com. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'm really excited about doing this moving forward. All right, guys, thanks. Bye.